Welcome, guys, to another episode of Consciously Curious, where we deep dive with those that are thriving in their passion. What a time to be alive for craft beer consumers.
Yeah.
So many choices these days at such a rapid pace. Helping me break down and introduce myself into kind of the other side of craft beer is Brady Potts, craft beer specialist. You can find him at shy_beer_guy on Instagram.
That's right.
So welcome to the show, Brady.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
In your own words, can you describe your day-to-day and what a specialist kind of does?
So, my day-to-day is always different. It's always the same, but it's always different. Anybody in sales knows that your day is kind of pre-planned.
Okay.
When you're a rep, I should say, your day is kind of pre-planned. Oh, well, I guess you could say in all sales. The way that I go about planning and the way it works in distribution in general is generally when you get hired as a sales rep or a craft beer specialist, you are given a territory with a list of accounts that you go to, whether it's bars, restaurants, retail stores, bottle shops, things of that sort. So on most days, I will prepare. If I'm preparing for the following day, I start by going through my list of accounts that I have for that next day, and I assess based on my relationship with the buyer at said account. I assess what needs to be done with them, and essentially I put it in order of which account I want to visit first and what I plan to do with said account.
Interesting.
So starting out, when you start this job, I'll take you back when I started this job. It's initially a struggle because you have to build these relationships.
Right.
You're new to a lot of these buyers. So what most buyers tend to do, and one thing I've gathered is it's all about the essentially the strength of your relationship, and also, for lack of a better term, it's about your ability to connect with them.
Sure.
If that makes any sort of sense.
It's more than beer.
And for the record, I tend to go off the rails a lot, so if I get
Sure.
I get off topic, you can just reel me back.
Okay.
So my day-to-day, I don't know exactly if you're looking for a specific answer, but that's generally my day-to-day is laying out my plan beforehand, assessing each individual account and what I plan to do with that account. And that's generally it. Other than that, when I actually, go through that day, there are things that happen naturally. For people that work in the distribution field, they know that this happens all the time. Sometimes you get thrown some curveballs where you'll have to drop what you're doing and go to an account. You have to bring them a tap handle. They're missing a tap handle, or they're having issues with their keg or what have you. So each day is different, but in the planning, it's generally always the same.
Is it just selling, or are you, like you said, you're bringing tap handles? Are you actually delivering the goods as well?
So our company delivers the goods. I myself do not.
Oh, okay.
Generally, we have a driver for that. So I do work for a smaller startup company. So there aren't a whole lot of employees in our company. Sure. So a lot of tedious responsibilities will fall on me, which makes sense. I mean, this is very much a self-sufficient type of job.
It is what you make of it?
Right, exactly. I think one thing, a big thing to be said about the industry, about this job in particular, is that it's, like I said, all about relationships. It's about the relationships that you build. And truthfully, I can say I'm actually not good at sales.
Okay.
I hate
being salesy.
Yeah, I hate the concept of sales. I just believe in authenticity, and I believe in speaking about what I know, and I believe in putting forth my talents to help somebody in the best way possible. I think there's a huge stigma behind a lot of craft beer reps, and I'll go into this in a second as to why buyers think this way, but after experiencing this job for so long, I quickly realized that a lot of buyers and bars and restaurants, because of how saturated the market is, they are just tired. They're tired of seeing so many sales reps. They probably see a million of them a day, and they've probably had some really great sales reps and some really bad sales reps that, you know, really broke their trust.
Sure.
And it makes it more difficult for the next guy stepping up to the plate. Guy or girl, I should say, because there's plenty of women that are out there rocking it too.
Okay.
So the industry is in a place right now where, particularly here in Chicago, where it's such a volatile market, and nobody really knows. I feel like, and this might just be my opinion, but nobody really knows where it's going to be in the next 5 to 10 years because of how many brands are out there.
Yeah.
I have my own theories, of course, as to where it's going to be, and that's where my passion comes in about this industry.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that my passion is necessarily in sales. I'd say my passion is in the business side of beer. I'm really fascinated with how the business side moves, how consumers buy, why they buy. It's fascinating to me, and that sounds very salesy. But it's more about
branding. It's you're thinking long term and relationships,
right?
And
the macro.
instead of the transactional aspect of the job,
right?
Instead of just like this one point of sale type of thing, it's like, well, how can we create and foster a relationship and over this shared good of beer?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, and I'm quoting my friend Dan Shedler, who I actually sat in this very spot with and had a chat on my podcast, was that beer is a social connector. It has been for thousands of years, and people are going to continue to drink beer for as long as they live. I mean, it's one of the oldest commodities on the face of the earth. So that being said, there's so much about the business side of things that coincides with that, and there's a lot of nuances in the industry that people don't really know about. And if I had to give an example of some of those nuances, I would say, you know, a lot of people don't realize that, to your point, branding is a huge factor. Branding and marketing is essentially my theory of what's going to win for a brewery, what's going to make a brewery win in the next 5 to 10 years. Branding and marketing. Because it's not just about the liquid anymore. I mean, we're now, I don't know, I want to say 10 plus years into the revolution of craft beer. It's well established. Yeah. It's in the public eye. You know, there are so many breweries popping up. I mean, I don't know if you knew, there are roughly 240 in the state. There's about 191 roughly, don't quote me on this, in the metro area, somewhere around those numbers. So it's really interesting to see where we might be in the next couple of years.
What did you do before this? Like, what type of person is meant for this job? Like, do you think you were well prepared for this job?
I think I was. And I have a little bit of an unconventional background, and this is not something that I condone for the younger listeners that you might have out there. But so I grew up on the south side of Chicago, which anybody out there is listening is from the south side of Chicago. They know that there is a very prominent culture of drinking and togetherness in the south side. So growing up, my parents were big beer drinkers. They were always into, I mean, they were early adapters of Sam Adams, even, of Goose Island, of Revolution even. So growing up, obviously I was an underage kid, but I would see those in my fridge. Anytime I went to go open up my fridge, I would see them. And I was just so enthralled. I was so amazed by the branding aspect of it. I said,
wow. At what age? What you were?
Yeah, man, real young. Probably like 10 to 15 years old.
You were already thinking about branding at that age?
Yeah, no, I was just so amazed by the fact that a beer could look different than a Miller Lite or a Bud Light or
Oh,
Coors Light
yeah,
can,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know, because that's all I had ever seen. That's all I had seen advertising for,
Right,
commercials,
right,
any sort of signage when going into your local grocery store or
Okay.
liquor store. That's all I ever really saw. Until, of course, I saw these beers that my parents were bringing home, and I used to remember taking them out and looking at the whole can, and just, probably my parents, if they heard this, God bless you guys, I love you. They're great parents, but they probably hear me and say, "Oh my God, our kid did that. That's crazy. It must be why he's into beer." So yeah, I mean that's kind of how I became exposed
Okay.
to the world of craft beer. And then growing up, I most of my professional career or my working career was in bar restaurant industry.
Oh,
So
okay,
that's where I
okay.
really got into it.
Okay.
Okay. I got to see how craft beer moved and the changes that were happening because I was growing up, I was 15 years old when I started in bar restaurant industry.
Okay.
Actually, 14 years old, and I got a worker's
One of
permit.
those, yeah.
And I got to watch people buy craft beer, and I saw different brands come in and out and change in different styles. And for whatever reason, I was just so amazed by it. It was really, really interesting to see why people bought those beers, because a lot of times I would listen in on conversations with bartenders and people
Sure.
buying the beers, and it was just very, very interesting to me. So I want to say about 18 years old, I started working at corporate restaurants and seeing that side of bar restaurant industry, and craft beer was slowly making its way into the corporate world.
Okay.
There wasn't a whole lot. I mean, Goose Island was always there. You had Sierra Nevada, who's been around for a long time. Sam Adams, of course, Founders, just to name a few. So those were some brands that I saw come in and out, and I think when I got to about 22 years old, roughly, I was working at more mom and pop type places, a little bit more open to bringing in different styles of beer and just adapting to the way the market was moving. Okay, so again, I thought that was extremely interesting to see all these brands coming in on the corporate side comparatively to a couple of years later on the mom and pop, the independent owner type side. So I thought that was, again, really interesting. And once I got to that point, I was about 22 years old. I started working at these independent places, and that was when I was obviously allowed to drink legally. So I became more open to having conversations about it and obviously drinking more of these beers. And I was bartending for a long time. When I turned 21, I started bartending. I went from serving to bartending. And even before I was bartending, I was very suggestive. I was just based on what I had heard from other people. I was very suggestive. I would do a lot of suggestive selling, and I had a lot of people tell me, "Wow, that's exactly how you described it." And then, of course, I got around to trying these beers, and I was told by many people that I had an innate ability to describe these beers.
Okay.
And that's kind of how I got into, doing what I do online with my page, which has led me to where I am today. So I worked at a place called Chuck's Barbecue in Darien. It was featured on Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. It was also featured on Chicago's Best. It's some really, really great Cajun/barbecue food, Southern Comfort style food.
Okay.
Phenomenal food. Okay, and of course they have some good beer to pair with it. So that was my first real bartending job, and that's really where I got into a lot of the craft beers that are out there today and a lot of the brands that are relevant.
Sure.
So after that, I had worked at a place called the Brass Tap in Orland Park, which was voted the #1 craft beer bar in the state 2 years running. At the time that I had started there, and they had 60 craft beers on tap, over 200 cans and bottles. And I remember walking in and said, "This is my wonderland. This is exactly where I want to be." So I furthered my for lack of a better term, just interest in the industry by working at a place like that. And I was, I had more confidence shot up my ass by people saying, "Oh my God, you described this exactly how you said. It's phenomenal." Whenever I would take care of bar guests or tables, I would have regulars to a point where they would say, "Just bring me whatever,
They
what I
trust
like."
you, yeah.
I would have people completely trust me, which is so strange because we live in a day and age now where people are very choosy with how they spend their money, and craft beer is expensive. It's not cheap. So the fact that somebody would trust me to bring them something that they like gave me a whole world of confidence that caused me to start the page that I have, the Shy Beer Guy page. And the reason that I started that was because of those people. So I started doing live reviews on a weekly basis where I would try beers for the first time, and I would try them live on Facebook and Instagram. And I always loved doing it live. I had a couple of people ask me right off the bat, like, "Why don't you edit these videos?" I said, "Well, because then I can't bullshit you. I'm being honest and I'm being authentic."
Right.
So
right. Even like nonverbal subtle cues, they're like, "Oh, that face he made."
Right. Yeah, I mean, those are things that factor in. But overall, that's kind of how I got my start. And then I was approached by the company that I'm with now via my social media channels.
Get
They
outta here.
said,
Really? Okay,
yeah,
that's cool.
they had said, "You're exactly the type of person that we want. Your beer. It seems like you're passionate about it." I said, "Yes, absolutely." And that's kind of how I got my start in the industry.
Interesting. Yeah, because my next question was going to be like, why this position? So did you do any research after they reached out, like, about this position and what it entailed, and did, after doing it for a couple weeks, like, did it meet your expectations?
Well, no, and then yes. So I didn't do any research because I knew what the job entailed.
Okay.
I was accustomed to seeing reps come
Sure,
in and out
yeah.
of the bars that I had worked at, and I always, idly, again, I'm an eavesdropper when it comes to things I'm interested in. It sounds terrible, but I would always listen in on the conversations between reps and the buyer at my stores that I worked at, and I kind of just got it. I got it. Like, I understood
Okay.
right away, like
Okay.
what it took to do that, and it was everything that I was generally everything that I was already equipped with.
Sure.
I think the only thing that I had to adjust to after starting the job was just the general flow of work, because I went from working for somebody else to essentially kind of being my own boss. Like,
Okay.
on a day-to-day basis, it's up to me to work. I have to be the one sending the emails. I have to be the one, creating my schedule for the day. I have to be the one, just doing my job.
Right.
There's nobody looking over my shoulder. There's nobody. Of course, I have a supervisor that I answer to and communicate with, but there's nobody there to hold your hand. It's kind of you get thrown to the wolves, and you're either good at it and you do it, or you don't do it.
So what's the day-to-day like then? It's a lot of running around, right? So you said you plan your
Yeah.
day, and then how do you do it, like, with the potential buyers that you think would take the longest and then go easiest, or start easy and build some momentum and then go all
I
the
think
way
it
down?
depends on the stage that I'm in the buying relationship. So what happens is we take notes. I take notes on an Excel sheet, and when I go into a particular account, for example, this is one of my accounts, Bitter Pops, right here in the city on
Yeah.
Lincoln Avenue. I'll come in here and I'll speak to Megan, and I say, "Hey, this is what I have for the week, blah, 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 whatever." She'll tell me what she's interested in. If she's not interested in anything, I always ask her why she's not interested, just so I know, so I have something to reference next time I come back. So I make sure to take those notes and put them in the Excel sheet, and then I move on to my next account. So a lot of it is a lot of diligent note taking.
Yeah.
A lot of tedious work, and definitely a lot of running around. I do like an ungodly amount of driving
Okay.
throughout the
Okay.
day, depending on my area. I have two different territories. One of them is luckily in the West Loop, so I'll just park and walk everywhere because everything's walking distance. But with my more suburban accounts and accounts that I've had for a while, I generally will drive to those accounts, make sure I speak to them in person. And every buyer is different too. That's the hard part about this job, and that's what people should know, is that you have to be conscientious that you're doing business with people, and each individual person is different, and that person might like you or they might not like you at all. And sometimes it doesn't have to do with anything, and sometimes it's because they just don't want to see a rep that day, or
Right.
there are tons of different factors into having this type of relationship with a buyer.
Okay. So forgive my ignorance, and you said you work for a distribution company. Does that mean that that company carries multiple breweries?
Correct.
Okay. Now,
Yep.
could you just work for a brewery if you wanted to? Do they have sales reps for?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Brand reps?
A lot of breweries out there are independent. They do independent distribution.
Okay.
Self-distro is what they call it, self-distribution.
Yeah.
And there are some that opt out and sign a contract with a distributor, use their resources, and get their product more places.
Okay.
But the interesting thing about the industry, and this is what makes it so fascinating right now, and it's also what makes it so volatile, is that there is this weird value around exclusivity and around smaller independent brewers. I mean, I think I just said it right there. I think the key word is exclusivity. People want what they can't have.
Right.
People want what is not readily available for the people that are, of course, heavily interested in the craft beer industry. So it's very interesting to see how that affects the distro side as well, because there is this weird kind of purgatory with a lot of consumers where some like the larger brands that are readily available, and most, from what I've seen, and this is obviously just my opinion and my experience with dealing with people online and dealing with buyers and other consumers from working this job, is that it's just not, overall, it's not that easy. You know what I'm saying? I kind of went off the rails there. I'm not sure where I was going with that, but remind me again your original question. You asked me what my day-to-day was, and you said...
Yeah, I mean, I think you did a good job. Like, why not work for, if you could, like Phase 3 or Hop Butcher or like a specific brewery? Like, why work for a distribution center company?
My personal answer to that, and the reason I took this job, was to learn.
Okay.
I took this job to learn about this side of the industry because, like I said, I'm so fascinated with the business side. And I wanted to see how a larger, although it's a small startup company, it's definitely larger than a self-distro brewery. I wanted to see how the larger side operated and how we fared in the market the way it is today. So that was really, really interesting to me. It was I took it as a learning experience. And the great thing about me doing this job is I can take these skills that I have, and who knows, in 10 years when when my interests change, if they do, then I can take these skills and apply them to another area of business in this same exact industry. The thing is the beer industry is so communal, and everybody works with each other, and there are a lot of things that coincide in terms of what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry, I'm blanking right now.
Oh, you're fine.
You can edit this part out. There are a lot of skills that coincide. So, in other words, if you start at one point in the craft beer industry, if you work at a bottle shop, for example, you can take that knowledge from working at the bottle shop, and you can just as easily apply it, what you've learned there, to this type of job, and vice versa.
Okay.
Because the industry is so communal, and because there's a lot of value around marketing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in the online space in the beer community.
Right.
And there's a lot of information out there.
Right. So, what's the ratio breakdown between buyers that you've built a relationship with and then completely new buyers?
How do you mean?
Do you
Elaborate.
do any cold calling or cold approaches to bottle shops or other restaurants or liquor
Sure,
stores? Right.
naturally.
Okay.
So when I started, I was given a list of accounts to go to, and naturally some get weeded out because it's not the right fit,
Okay.
or they just don't want to buy, or whatever. So those are things that happen all the time.
Sure.
So naturally you have to filter in some other accounts. So you have to start that relationship over. So there is, cold calling is definitely part of the job. It's not it's not a fun thing to do because they're a lot of times you get misinterpreted and you don't necessarily get all the information you want. I mean, most of it when you're starting out, if you're cold calling, is just getting the information for the buyer and trying to get into contact. And I swear that's probably my biggest pet peeve is with the job is sometimes if I call into a restaurant, for example, and I say, is so-and-so available? And they say, oh, no, they're not available. And I say, well, do they have an email I can reach them at, a phone number? No. Oh, no, they don't. Oh, so they don't have a business card? Oh, well, they do. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. What's the information on the
Yeah.
business card? It's very strange, and it's not like that everywhere.
So
it's
have you
it's
felt
just
like-
a tedious little...
Right. Like maybe going in person is better then?
Absolutely.
Definitely. Okay.
Absolutely. I always believe in that because I like to show my face.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm a pretty expressive person.
Yeah.
Especially when I talk about what I'm interested in.
Right, of course.
It's easy to tell.
Yeah.
So when I sit down with a person, with a buyer, potential buyer, they can see in my face that not only do I know what I'm talking about, but I'm serious about having an authentic working relationship. Whereas if I'm just calling them, they can't really see that expression on my face.
Yeah.
So it's hard to convey that through tone of voice. A lot of times you'll just get rushed off the phone.
For sure.
Or you'll
How have you dealt with getting no as an answer?
how have I dealt with it? It's funny.
Like have you become like numb to it now, or just used to it?
I've absolutely become used to it. I wouldn't necessarily say numb because, obviously most of the time I want to make a sale and I want to make a make a person happy.
Right,
And it just comes with the territory. It comes with any sales job. You have to be able to take no.
You don't take it personally.
No, not at all. I try to understand why.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I get that's where a lot of relationships can go south because some buyers just want to say, no, I don't want to buy.
I'm trying to see it
and
from
they
their
don't want to see
perspective,
you.
though.
Right, exactly. I'm a big fan of context.
Right.
There's a rhyme and a reason for everything. Just tell me what it is. I'm an easy person to communicate to. I'm the one thing that I say whenever speaking to a potential buyer, I say, I'm real easy to do business with as long as we're honest with each other. There's no reason that we can't do business or we can't at least communicate what we both want to get from the situation or don't want to get.
Right.
It's all about honesty. And that's why I say that I'm bad at sales. It's because, again, I don't want to sound too salesy, and I don't like the perception of, I don't like being perceived
As a sales rep.
I don't like
Someone who's
being
selling
perceived
something.
as somebody that's just trying to make money. I mean, I don't do this to make money. I do this because I like beer and I believe in it, and I believe there is a solution for everything. So another thing that comes with the job is, it's not just making sales and then you leave. There are sometimes you have to offer some sort of value proposition for them to want to buy your product. So you'll say, yeah, if you buy this, we can put some signage up in here, get it moving a little bit quicker. If you want to do some sort of an event around it, I'll do a tasting, I'll talk to people, things of that sort. So, there's a lot of problem solving skills that are necessary for this job
Sure.
as well.
Yeah. That's cool. Changes it up.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's where I find a lot of joy is, again, finding the reason why they don't want to buy or why they're hesitant, and
Right.
trying to come up with a solution.
Do the buyers ever ask, why from you? Why not directly from the brewery, or why not from another distributor? Do they usually care about that stuff,
Well, no.
or is it rates, like what the cost is and things like that? I wonder if different distributors have different costs to the buyers.
Yeah, well, yeah, they obviously do. A larger distributor will have a little bit more leeway
Yeah, that makes
with
sense.
their pricing than
Okay.
a smaller distributor would, or a self-distro brewery.
Right.
Because the thing about self-distro is they're doing it themselves, typically, usually because they don't have the funds to, work with a distributor. They don't have the necessary equipment to keep up with that level of production of their
Interesting.
product.
Yeah.
So, it it's all really fascinating to me, and my mind, like, this is why I'm so passionate about it. I mean, my mind is going a million miles an hour right now. There's so many things that I want to talk about and mention.
I know.
But it's like it's getting all jumbled up in my head. So, your question was, do buyers ask
Yeah.
about?
Do they care about that stuff? Like,
No, I think because most of them,
they just care about
they
moving the
know
product.
they know how distribution works. If you're in a buyer position, you generally know how distribution works.
Okay.
So, and that's not to say that there aren't some that will ask you a question that makes you kind of scratch your head, but most people in that position know what they're getting into, and they know how distribution works, and that's never really in question.
Okay. You said earlier that you want to believe, you want to sell things that you believe in, that you back, and you would put your name on, right?
Yeah.
Working for a distribution company, you have, like, or even, I mean, I think more so for a distribution company, you don't really have say into what products you're pushing.
Correct. Well, actually, I'll correct myself there. I do offer some feedback to the company owners, and I think they value my feedback in terms of what brands I think are good, and what styles I think are good coming out of our breweries, or other breweries. We're all the good thing is we all like beer.
Right.
We can talk about it. We can nerd out about it if we wanted to. I think, but at the end of the day, it's not it's not my choice as to what brands are being brought on board. However, I have gotten the green light from my company owners to, of course, drop a card at a brewery if I think that they're worthy of
Coming on
board and
nice.
being part of our portfolio. And I think that's where we differentiate ourselves, or we like to say we differentiate ourselves from the rest of the distributors out there, is that we have a natural understanding of what types of brands have what it takes to have longevity in this type of industry.
Okay. That's really cool. So that's the other side of it. It's not just selling to the buyers, but it's also bringing on new clients that you want to distribute and help get their name out.
Yeah,
As well. That's
and
really cool.
that whole thing is a process. I mean,
Okay.
it's all a process to get another brewery on board. I mean, you don't want to rush them. You want it to be on their terms. You want to make sure they're happy, because they are the supplier. They're the ones that are making the decision to. I mean, it's a big business decision to go from self-distro or no distribution to working with a distributor. It's a huge business decision from a brewery owner or brewer's perspective.
Okay.
Reason being is because they have to consider the amount of production changes that has to happen, what new equipment they need to do so. Also, what would happen to their brand if they put it out into the market with all these other brands. They have to have the right pieces in place in order for them to do that and be successful.
What are your thoughts on those that are self-distributing right now, and that they might, give a sneak peek on social media, like, hey, we're about to drop this in certain liquor stores on this day? Has that bitten them in the ass? Like, or has it produced so much hype that it would sell out relatively quickly?
I would say the second option. I mean, it's definitely helped their brand. In, like I said, such a volatile market, exclusivity sells.
Yeah.
So for self-distributors, I think they're benefiting from it. They might not be benefiting from it on a grand scale, but they're benefiting from it based on what they gain in terms of brand building, brand awareness.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. We're in a brand building world. We're in a brand given
Right.
world. I mean, it's all about branding.
Right.
I mean, that's it.
Yeah, and like when they do decide to scale up, it's hard to not get lost in the weeds. Like right now, if they are self-distributing, you kind of have something special on your hands, and people like yesterday, I like legit dropped $80 on 4 4-packs. It's insane how expensive beer is nowadays.
It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts.
But like Phase 3 and Hot Butcher and I think I picked up Transient as well. Like they've been doing really well, and like it's hard to keep up with how good these beers are, and I have to tell myself like, oh, it's okay, I'll just get the next one. Like this it'll be fine. Like so it's cool, really cool to see that, and I wonder if when they are able to scale up, if they'll actually decide to, or if they'll just remain like in a focused specific niche.
See, they're only and everything I just said obviously is my
Right.
it's just speculation. Like I don't actually know that for sure because I'm not part of their business, so I don't know how well they're doing or how not, if they're not doing well. Based on what I perceive, obviously they're doing well because they're selling out of their product. They're building brand and awareness, and that's what you do in this technological social media type age, this era that we're living in. Does that necessarily mean that if they went the large scale distribution route that it would kill their brand? No, because if they kept up and again, this is my opinion, if they kept up their marketing efforts and did it in a way and with a speed that moves with the way the beer industry moves online, then they can continue building brand and awareness. Again, I think that this is a game of, if you are a brewer or an owner, I think this is a game of having the right pillars in place to ensure longevity in the industry. And I can't say it enough, branding and marketing are huge. Because you can have good liquid, but if nobody knows about it, what are you going to do? Or you can have, moderate liquid that most people like, maybe not everybody, but you have rock star branding, you have rock star marketing team or putting forth marketing efforts in a rock star way, then you will do a lot better than the self-distro brewery that makes phenomenal liquid that doesn't do any sort of brand building or marketing.
Do you think influencers are underutilized on social media for breweries?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I would say that they are underutilized because there are a lot of influencers out there, and there's such a stigma around the word influencer.
Even
now.
like micro influencers, it doesn't have to be like hundreds of thousands of followers.
I think and I've said this before, and I will say this to any brewery owner or brewer, is that it's about the type of content that said influencer or content creator is putting out. If they're putting out informative, valuable content to the consumer, then that's who you want to invest in. If they're just posting pictures with shitty captions saying, tried this beer, it was good, and they get a bunch of likes on it, I mean, that's not going to help you in the long run.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, granted, they might have a lot of likes and it might get seen, but does it have a resonant effect? And that's one of those nuances in that space, in the influencer space, is those nuances. Are they giving the consumer something valuable? I like to say that I give something valuable when I do the live reviews because it's authentic, it's real time, and I draw comparisons to price point. And obviously it's all opinion based, but I like to draw that comparison because it's so expensive. And in my opinion, expectations are everything when it comes to beer. If you tell somebody that you're going to have their Mr. Planner's Peanut IPA and it doesn't taste like peanuts as much as you want it to, then they're going to be super disappointed. But if I jump on live and I say, oh, it tastes like peanuts, but it's a moderate amount of peanuts with a slight bit of earthiness, slight bit of saltiness at the end, but you still get that IPA bitterness, what have you, whatever I come up with, then that's going to be more resonant for that person because they know what to expect before making the purchase decision.
Right.
And that's a big deal.
How many eyes are on the app Untappd? And
A
are there
ton.
influencers on Untappd that breweries can market? Like, do you think that's a smarter move to tap those influencers rather than Instagram?
No, because it's not very modern. The app is not very modern.
Oh.
And I actually spoke with an associate, somebody that works in the office of Untappd, who said that they're working on like an influencer program. But I haven't seen a whole lot of influencers on there because there's not a whole lot of room for variated content. It's a picture only, picture only, review only platform, and it's meant for the masses. I myself don't use it a whole lot because I remember every beer that I drink.
I don't, so that's my log.
Yeah, that's a log for a lot of people, and that makes sense.
Right.
I can remember if I've had it or not. I can't tell you what I thought about it.
Okay.
So that's what it's probably good for, to remember what you thought about it. But I don't think that there's any value from a brewer owner's perspective because there's not a whole lot of room for variated content.
Sure.
All you get is pictures and a couple word reviews.
Okay, I got you. Within your circle of other craft beer specialists, what's the average turnover rate for a specialist? Are there people that are making careers out of it?
Yeah. I've seen and met some people that have been doing this for a long time, and I've seen and met some people that have been doing this for a moderate amount of time.
Are they loving
5,
it?
6
Those
years?
long timers. Or is it just a job?
Those people that I speak to, and it varies. It varies, I should say. I think it depends. I think a lot of them are disgruntled or just tired. I mean, because it's sales. You get burned out. Like it's easy to get burned out. No matter what, if you're in sales, you've experienced a burnout at one time or another. It's just about how quick you bounce back.
Okay.
So as far as those people go, I think they've been in it for such a long time that they've seen so much change in the industry. It's probably hard for them to keep up. It just depends on how much they love the industry. It depends on how much they love beer.
Sure.
And it can't really be. I can't really speculate too much on that because, somebody could very much, very well like beer a whole lot and have been a craft beer sales rep in the industry for a long time, but they don't. Their demeanor is just different because they've been doing the job for a while. So I'll chalk it up to each their own.
Sure.
Every individual is different. Just depends on how passionate they are, how excited they are, if they believe there is opportunity. And I think that's a big thing too, is believing the opportunity, seeing the opportunity while doing this job. Because if you're not looking forward to a new style coming out from one of your brands or having a new brand on board, then you're not looking forward to the opportunity. And if you're not looking forward to the opportunity, then what's the point?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean that's all I have to say about that. Forrest Gump. That's all I have to say about that.
Where do people usually go after this if they're moving on?
I've seen a lot of bouncing around. I've seen some people run away with this type of job and move higher up in the company. I've seen most reps jump over to a brewery or a business ownership position where they own their own craft beer bottle shop or or bar restaurant or what have you.
Oh wow.
Again, I think, and going back to my earlier point, I think that kind of goes with what I said about the industry coinciding with one another, with itself, essentially, is that you can take these skills anywhere. You can really do anything that you want to. It just depends on your preferences and what your goals are.
Okay.
For example, I myself would love to open up a bar restaurant one day because I have experience in that field, and I think I've got a couple ideas about innovating in the craft beer industry / bar restaurant industry and creating something really cool. And also I love the idea of hospitality. In addition to that, beer and food goes great together.
Yeah.
It's like the best pairing. Obviously, wine does too, but beer and food, there are so many different combinations. The difference between wine and beer, and there's probably a lot of wine enthusiasts that will get really angry at me for saying this, but to me and to most people that aren't a fanatic of wine, there's red and there's white and there's like rosé. I'm sure there's subcategories within those styles, and there's probably other styles. I don't know much about wine, so again, this is only my opinion. But there are so many different styles of beer with a plethora of different flavor profiles that it's truly remarkable how many combinations there are between food and beer. And I'm sure there's
Same thing for wine.
Yeah, I'm sure it's the same thing, but there are. I think the difference is there's a lot of definitive. There's a lot of different definitive styles, but just as anybody else, some people might not know that. So again, all speculation. I try not to speak about what I try to only speak about what I know
For sure.
and what my theories are. But I don't want anybody to take it as law, because this industry is ever changing. But I mean, undoubtedly, beer and food go great together.
Right. For those that want to get into the beer scene professionally, this is, I would say, from what I've gathered in this interview, like this is a good entry. Is it an entry level position to get into and get your feet wet in the industry? Or do you need some know-how before you get in?
I'd say you have to have some skills.
Okay.
You'd have to know what you're talking about. If you don't know about beer, you better have some rock star salesman skills. I think a good entry-level position would be at a bottle shop or craft beer bar.
Okay.
That would be the best way to start, so you can familiarize yourself with the different brands out there. You can try things when you work at a place like that. You can try things and try them for free, and not have to unload your wallet. With this job, you have to have an understanding of the way. You definitely have to have an understanding of the way the business of bars and restaurants and retail shops work. Okay. You also, obviously should have at least some sort of beer knowledge.
Yeah.
General styles. Most companies will require a Cicerone certification.
Oh, what is that? Cicerone?
Cicerone is the it's like the certification that you can get for beer knowledge. There's a couple different levels. The level 1 is what most people are required to have if they have this type of job, which is a certified beer server is what they call it, and then you go all the way up to basically like a master or advanced. Advanced, I think that's the fourth level.
Okay. And through this job now, though, you've probably met some very interesting people in addition to the buyers.
Yes.
Right? So have you? I mean, I'm thinking of like brewers, right? So over time, I'm sure these brewers want to make their own name for themselves, and they want to branch out and things like that. And I mean, the one person that comes to mind is Sean from Phase 3. Someone like that, do you think like maybe 5-10 years down the line, and I think the answer is yes for you, to approach you and partner up and kind of open up your own kind of tap room in a way, and you'll handle like the business side of it, and they'll handle like maybe the brewing side of it.
Okay.
Is it kind of ideal for you, like later down the line?
I mean, that would be cool. I think, again, I think there's so many options with this industry, particularly with me. Again, I'm an optimist. I'm a big believer in opportunity, and this industry has so much opportunity if you understand how it works and what it takes to win. So ideally that would be cool. Yeah, I think that would be cool, but I think
You're not holding your breath, though.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I think I would like to see something like that. I would like to see it out myself, because that's a lot of what brewers do. Brewing is hard work.
Yeah.
It's like labor. It's like hard. I mean, you have to clean the tanks. You've got to, and there's so much cleaning involved in that job. It's kind of ludicrous. And it's like heavy lifting, and it's hard work. It's labor work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not all fun and games and like, yeah, you get to sell your brand and your beer styles.
Right, okay.
And you have a brewery, cool, woohoo. But
right.
it's tough work. So taking that same, that same mentality, I want to take that same mentality to me opening up my own potential bar restaurant / bottle shop. Okay, because there are a lot of hardworking people in this industry, and the people that are doing well and have created great brands or, a great business, those are hardworking people, and I respect that a lot. Mm-hmm. So I want to pay homage to that by, doing my part as well. I don't want any shortcuts. If somebody came up to me and said, we should do this, yada yada, whatever. I'll provide the funding. That would be cool, and nobody really knows what they would do in that situation until they're in it. But ideally, I would like to work for that myself, because I just respect the industry so much and how hard those that have worked.
I wasn't saying that like anything was handed to you, but you would just obviously have like a 50-50 buy-in into it, and I'm sure there's gonna be more than two people in it, but I'm just because I know that you're more interested in the branding and the business side, so like I think that'd be a dynamic duo.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely think so. As far as opening up my own brewery, I kind of don't want to go that route.
Okay.
And I've been pretty adamant about that. With choosing a job as well, from job to job. I like seeing and experiencing all different brands, because that's that's just what I love about the industry.
Right.
So if I can find myself to one brand, then my whole life becomes that brand, and it's not like I can't try other brands or what have you. I'm just worried about what, and this is a very rare occasion where I worry about what people think, but I worry about people getting the wrong impression of me, for example, when I do live reviews, because I'm going to do those for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I love doing that. I drink beer on a daily basis. I love trying all different styles and brands, and that's what I love. So basically, I'm eliminating that brand from the possibility of me ever reviewing their beer, and I don't really like that. So I try to be
inclusive.
No, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a facilitator for all brands to showcase their product.
Yes.
So I think a bar restaurant / bottle shop would be the best way for me to exhibit that.
What neighborhood? You said Southside. What neighborhood in the Southside?
I currently live in Oaklawn. I grew up in a town called Ashburn. It's technically Chicago, which is not too far from Oaklawn. So, for example,
how often you go to Hailstorm?
Actually, it's been a while since I've been there. I'd say my frequenting brewery is my backyard breweries. It's Open Outcry on 109th and Western.
Okay.
And Horse Thief Hollow.
Okay.
On 105th and Western. So Open Outcry opened up in 2017. Shout out to John Brand. John Brand is one of the best business owners that I know, period. He's a phenomenal guy. works really hard. He understands what it takes to win. You know, he's got a great social media presence. He's doing innovative things there. And if you see him, you'd recognize him if I pointed him out.
Yeah.
Right. If I pointed him out, I said that's John Brand. You'd always remember him. He's a big, tall guy, bald guy, but he walks around every table, you know, in the brewery and make sure everybody's having a good time, and you know is open to feedback, and he's just probably one of the best business owners that I know.
Yeah.
So I love that place.
So, do you think it's the market in Oak Lawn is pretty saturated, or would you like to open up a shop around that area?
I've thought about it, but just like in any business, location is key.
Yeah.
So obviously somewhere in the city would be great because there's nowhere in the state that competes with craft beer sales in the city.
Yes.
So ideally the city would be the best place for me. If I couldn't pick anywhere in the city, or even close to the city, then I think Oak Lawn would be a good option. And I thought about it before because there aren't a whole lot of places in the area that are open that have, you know, a craft beer element to them. I mean, you've got Deja Brew, which is a great bar restaurant. They've got a ton of tap handles. You've got a local Binny's right down the street, so that would be competition. But other than that, there's not really a whole lot of craft beer spots around there. I'd say the two closest places would be the Open Bottle in Tinley and Crafted 1979, which is in Mokina, they're both 20 miles away.
Right. What are the profit margins in a bar restaurant for the beer?
Typically run like 30%.
Oh, that's higher than I thought, actually.
Yeah, no, it's bars and restaurants make they should at least make a decent amount of money on their craft beer sales. But that's generated to cover overhead costs, of course, and at the end of the day, they realistically make, depending on the place, about at least half of that back.
Okay.
So that of that 30%, they half.
Okay. My understanding, I thought it was a little lower. So then that adds to their them being hesitant to bring on new drinks, new beers.
Yeah, if the price point isn't friendly enough, to be correlated with their demographic,
yes, then
they're not going to buy. Which is a struggle because there is a way to curate your demographic, your clientele, to be accustomed to those type of things, but not have to entirely commit to it. But there's a lot of closedmindedness again, and a lot of it has to do with buyers being beaten down by seeing so many different reps. Unless you're working at a place like this where this is your job and you have to see reps all the time. If I go to a normal bar restaurant or a dive bar or what have you, it's a struggle. It's a constant struggle because I have to come up with ways that they can sell my beer if they buy it.
Yeah.
Even though that should technically be their job.
Right. Right.
It makes sense though at the same time because I don't ever want to put somebody in a bad situation. And again, that's why I say that I suck at sales. But
I think long term that'll pay off for you.
I think so too.
Respect your honesty.
I think so too. I'm a big believer in relationships. I want to give people what they want, but I want to give it to them in a realistic fashion. So in other words, I know when somebody is just trying to get something out of me. And I also know when somebody they genuinely need a little bit of help.
Oh, okay.
So I think striking that balance is also very important for this job because you have to understand who you're talking to. Again, and that goes back to my earlier point, which is you're dealing with people. Each individual person is different. You kind of have to feel them out, and that's with any sales job. So it's cool. I like that about sales. I also dislike it about sales. It's very much a love-hate relationship, and that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. I mean, you think about love-hate, they're polarizing polarizing things, and that those are in between. There has to be some balance.
Yeah.
I can't love my job all the time, because eventually, just like any human being would, that they'd eventually burn out to the point where they're never going to go back again. And I don't want to be that. It's healthy for me as a sales rep to vent my frustrations, or think about them, write them down. I keep a little black book that I write in every single day.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And I write a quote for the day, and this is just something that I've kind of always done for the last 3 to 4 years.
Wow.
Is that I'll write down a quote for the day. I write down whatever I'm thinking about my day ahead of me, or my past day, or the previous day, and then I also write my biggest fear, and I write what I want to learn for that day. And that has become a huge outlet for me to keep my sanity with this job, because there are a lot of no's, and there's a fair amount, just as many yeses, but those no's hurt way worse than those
Even
yeses
though you tell
feel
yourself
good.
not to take it personally. It's
It still sucks, but you take it with a grain of salt. You have to.
I don't have any more questions.
So,
what do you think is next? What's next for you? And I'd like to hear your take on the craft beer industry in 5 to 10 years.
like I said, if anybody could pull anything from this podcast, the one thing about the craft beer industry, and I've been laughed at by brewers and owners for saying this, even though they know I'm right, and this is something I can confidently say is not speculation, it's based on my experience in the industry and what I've seen, because I spend a lot of time in the online space. Marketing and branding is huge. It is the reason that your business in this industry will either thrive or die. Again, there are so many breweries out there that make good beer, but are not on Instagram, not on Facebook, and if they are, they're not updating it avidly. They're not being creative with their content. It's very stale, and a lot of brewers and owners that I've spoken to say things like, "Oh, I don't have the time, I don't have the funding, I don't have this, I don't have that." Cell phones are free. You have one. That's literally all you need to create content. There are apps out there. You can edit videos. You can do all sorts of different content with different apps, or just take photos. It's just about seeing it as an investment of your time that is going to better your business in a way that you can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Because the sheer fact that that if I'm a business owner, I can reach directly into your pocket and demand your attention is remarkable. It's amazing. That has never been done in the history of mankind. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So thinking about attention, thinking about marketing and branding, those are the things that you should focus on, other than, of course, making the liquid and the general goings-on or runnings of your business. That is where your future is.
Okay. I guess we can talk about social media in a little bit. Which demographic do you think on your page, has been the most engaging? Is it on the consumer level? Is it other craft beer specialists that relate to what you're talking about? Or is it brewers? Who's paying attention?
Consumers. It's a consumer world. Those are the people that are on social media. Yeah. Those are the people. We're all consumers.
Right.
We're all consumers one way or another. As far as people in that space, there's a lot of consumers posting their beers, what they're trying. Even if they don't post beers, they'll still follow people that post about it, follow breweries, follow influencers. It's all, again, attention based. You're grabbing at the attention of consumers. So as far as engagement on my page goes, I get a lot of engagement from consumers who are trying to relate to me based on the beers that I'm trying and drinking and talking about, and they share with me their beer adventures. That's what I like to call it, beer adventures. They share those with me, or they'll give me suggestions on what to try. They'll say, hey, I had this, you should try it, or I would compare this to that, or it's a hobby for some. It's enjoyable for most. But either way, we're all consumers, and those people are all consumers, and it's about demanding their attention.
How often have you come across someone that is not familiar with beer at all, but that, and they've expressed that they're interested, they just don't know where to start? What direction would you point those people in?
I would say start with what you like and vary slowly.
Okay. What if they're just used to the commercial stuff, Miller Lite and Coors and Coronas?
Again, I would still say start with what you like. And by say with what you like, I mean stylistically. I don't mean brand-wise. I mean stylistically, because you can't start with a brand that you already know.
So are there are levels to this? Do they acquire the taste of a beer and then acquire the taste of an IPA, and then do you go? Is it a turnoff to go straight into the double dry hop or the triple dry hop IPA?
No, not if they like it. I mean, to each their own, like I said.
Yeah.
But most people, the way they start, and I've started this way as well, and a lot of experienced beer drinkers can agree with this, is there's the spectrum of craft beer life, is what I like to call it. You start here. You start with your domestics and your Bud Light, your Coors Light, your Miller Lite, your High Life, whatever. Which I still drink High Life. I love High Life.
We're not too good for High Life.
No, champagne of beers, man. A lot of brewers actually drink High Life all the time. Yeah, it's crazy. It's cheap and it's light, it's easy. So it starts here with your domestics, Miller Lite, Coors Light, Bud Light, whatever, and then you vary it slowly. You turn into you start with craft lagers, craft pilsners, so still the same style as those domestics, but they're made by craft breweries, so there's a little bit more love put into it, a little bit more ingredients, more time. I think that between those styles, that's the one thing to pull away between a craft lager and just a domestic lager, is that they have more quality ingredients. So you're also less likely to get a hangover off craft lagers than you are off of.
Wait, why? Yeah. So what's the
reason being is
to
Bud Light, for example, and I don't think Coors Light does it. Miller Lite, I think they do add some, but Bud Light is made with rice. It's a rice lager. So there's an active ingredient in rice when it's fermented in the beer, from my understanding, is that it just gives people a hangover.
Oh, no way. I didn't know that.
Scientifically, I can't break it down for you. It's just something that I've learned. So the difference is a lot of craft lagers don't use rice. Again, more quality ingredients, a little bit more time, more love, more care, and also, quality control. I'm sure, Miller, Bud, Coors, they all, go through quality control testing, but there's no better quality control than that of an independent brewer who's trying to get their name out there.
Right.
They care way more about that one batch of beer that they're making than Miller Lite cares about the 3,465,000 102nd batch. So it starts there, the lagers, and then you slightly get a little bit darker. You can move to an amber, and there's subcategories, sub-styles that you can fit in between there. But it's usually lager, amber, red and browns, and then you get into porters, and then stouts, and then barrel-aged stouts.
Yeah.
And then IPAs fits there in the middle somewhere. And again, expectation I think is everything. As long as you know what you're going for, as long as you know what you like, and then you can variate from there, then you're on the right path.
Yeah. Um, is are fruited beers relatively new?
Yes and no.
And do you think it's a fad? Do you think it's gonna like phase out?
Fruited beers, how, like actual fruited beers, or fruity beers in general, like beers
No,
that
like with
we got
fruit.
dogs in here.
Oh, nice. Like
It's a dog-friendly place.
with fruit.
With fruit. I think it's a new concept.
It was frowned upon before, or not frowned upon, but like
It's been done.
Yeah.
It's been done. I'm sure it's been done for hundreds of
like
years.
hazy was frowned upon before.
Right.
Okay.
Hazy, the whole hazy thing is also amazing. I've never seen anything really like that, like this, I should say, because it's still going on, ever before in the industry. I think it's, as far as hazies go, it's just such a remarkable style. It's different. It's something that people are not accustomed to, and I've also seen a lot of non-craft beer drinkers drink a hazy and say, I really love this. And I've never heard, the only comparative like trend in styles that I've seen since I've been aware of the industry is West Coast IPAs, which are basically, I can't even say this, but in a nutshell for the layman's out there, it's the same thing as a hazy IPA. It's just cleaner, crisp, not as in-your-face fruity, and you don't get that mouthfeel from it. So it actually is, I know it's entirely different, but again, for the layman's out there,
Yeah.
the West Coast style IPA was a comparison in terms of fads or trends that I've seen, but it's not nearly as popular because I've only seen a handful of people say, this is my first IPA, I really like it, when drinking a West Coast IPA. Probably only a handful of people I've ever seen say that or heard say that. But with hazy IPAs, I've seen plenty of people, and I've given my friends who don't drink craft beer, hey, why don't you try out this IPA? Oh, no, I don't like IPAs. Okay, well, why don't you try this one? This is different. I say, okay, and they try it. This is amazing. Oh, my God. I didn't know IPAs were like this. Yeah. So, I mean, the whole hazy thing is amazing. And there's, again, a lot of stigma around that, too.
Right.
The stigma with hazies is there was a lot of brewers that fought it for the last, like, I would say about 2 years ago, coming up on 3 years ago, there was a lot of brewers that initially were fighting that trend because it was seen as a lazy way of brewing because it's an unfiltered beer. But in reality, in order to achieve the necessary profiles to execute this beer the right way, it's difficult. It's known now. There's a lot of brewers out there now that understand the concept of biotransformation, which is what gives it the hazy color with the mouthfeel and the flavor profiles that you're looking for. But previously, there was a lot of shitty hazy IPAs out there, and there were very few really good ones. So a lot of brewers were upset. They're pissed. Granted, I think that's part of the industry. There's a lot of brewers out there that have been doing this for years, 20 years, 30 years, 15 years, whatever. And just as any other human being, they're resistant to change.
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of people in this industry that are resistant to change, and what I would say to those people is tough shit.
Right. It's gonna change without you.
Adapt or die. I mean, consumers have spoken. They enjoy this style. And just to put things in perspective for you, in 2017, might have been 2016, Sierra Nevada, New Belgium, Sam Adams, all big brands that we know, they made more money, more revenue in their hazy IPA sales in the first quarter of that year than all other IPAs for the entire previous year.
I didn't know they had hazies.
Yeah, they do have some hazy series, and those are mass-produced hazies, so they're slightly different in my opinion than some more independent brewers. I think independent is definitely the way to go with that style, but it just goes to show how consumers are adapting to this style and the demand for it overall.
Yeah.
But where can people find you and listen to you?
Yeah, you can find me at on Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, the works. I am busy working every day doing this craft beer sales job, so it's kind of impeded my ability to create as much content as I like, but I'm sitting on a ton, and I'm strategically placing it throughout the year, and I'm working on ramping up my content production again. But you can find me on those platforms at Shy Beer Guy. It's CHI is in Chicago, Beer Guy. Shy_beer_guy on most platforms. Otherwise, just Shy space beer space guy.
Okay, cool. Well, it was a pleasure, Brady.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
So guys, thanks for tuning in. Stay curious. Aloha. I'll see you in the next episode.